Hello, Cougar Nation, and welcome to another edition of Chatting with the Cougars. And today we're going to serve volley, take it to the net. We're going to talk a little men's tennis with head coach Jay Bruner. And Jay, first of all, welcome to Chatting with the Cougars.
Thanks for having me, Everett. This is a fun way to communicate with all the people I can't see, and I'd like to talk to.
Well, of course, Jay, I'd rather talk to you in person, but that's not possible because of the COVID-19 situation and still practicing our social distancing. So let's go back to, I guess, March. Jay, I know you guys were in the midst of your spring season. I think you had a match coming up that weekend. Of course, everything goes crazy. Everything breaks loose. What was the conversation like with your team?
Yeah, we were actually as kind of preparing for our spring break trip to New Orleans. We were going to leave about 2 days prior to when things started to get shut down, and it was a mix of emotions just because we had been a part of in the middle of our season, having played 13 matches, and we were getting ready for our biggest trip of the season, and you know what turned out to be us heading into a place that was kind of a hot spot for the virus as it began to kind of become publicized. So the conversation for us was kind of easy or self-explanatory a little bit for the guys, just knowing the caution for the trip we were getting ready to make. But it came as a shock to me. We were at a place where we were really passing on information about 5 minutes after we got it. So we were kind of having to process information that Matt Roberts was doing a great job of giving us, and then we were having to kind of interpret it and then figure out how to share it as best we can with our players. In a pretty quick turnaround, because once it got out, they'd hear it from somebody else. So the conversation was pretty informative, just because the guys had a lot of questions, and we've had a couple experts on the team who were following the coronavirus, just because they were in different countries, kind of watching it spread, with family members. So I felt like we had actually been talking about it for a couple weeks. So when we kind of when it was present in Charleston and we had to make decisions, it wasn't a huge shock for the guys to have a conversation about. But I think they're still all kind of processing, what that season felt like to kind of finish the way it did.
And you're talking about that season, coach. It's a situation where, when the season came to a halt, I think the record was like 7-6, but it seemed like the kids were kind of starting to hit their stride. And I'm pretty sure that was probably where the most frustration was coming from, because you guys were starting to play your best tennis, and then you had to shut the season down.
Yeah, it was kind of the middle part of the season for us is always like that. The middle of March, sometime around spring break is usually when, we've done a bunch of road trips and traveling and bonding as a team and kind of moving, getting people into the right positions. So it's always a fun time of year. It's kind of about, even if we've played more than half of our matches, it feels like halftime. So when we get back from spring break, we know we've probably got a stride going, and then we're going to play about 7 or 8 matches before our conference tournament, which is the finale of the season. So, we were in a good place. We had been not having full health or full personnel, at some of our matches, but the guys really were young and, really showing some momentum, I think, together as a team. So there were a lot of things that were, we were kind of hoping to get a chance to see play out, that, were stopped short. But it was, for us, that we were really just excited to, be kind of getting to that point in the season. So, I'm sorry we didn't get to do that, but at the same time, all these guys were young enough, and they really got what seemed like a season of play and competition, in a lot of matches. And then for them to, not get to finish that, there's a little bit of regret in that. And at the same time, I think they played enough of a season where they got some growth and maturity out of it. So it'll be interesting to see, in our sport, if it was a year where people got experience and got a little bit stronger and they come back, really stronger than they did, or if it really ends up feeling like a season where we didn't get to finish.
What's it been like since you mentioned that a lot of your kids are really from around the country, all over the United States? What's it been like since those guys left back in March?
Personally, it's been lonely. I usually spend all of March and April really, building relationships with these guys and, working on a common goal. So for them to not be here, obviously takes a lot of the focus and what I'm working on during the day, to accomplish with them and all the things that we do to make practice and matches happen. So with them gone, that was definitely a void in my what I had my expectation for the year. But at the same time, it's been really kind of interesting to kind of watch them. We've got guys from 5 continents on the team, and to have to watch them make that adjustment to get out of town. It's not just we did have some players that can drive to Asheville and drive to Orlando, to go home. And then I've got players that are trying to figure out how to get to Taiwan as fast as they can, or to Queensland, Australia, on the Gold Coast. And we've got parents that are worried about their kids, which I am too. I think of these kids as, as my children when they're here. So it was just, really a spectrum of things that happened when they left. And now trying to, I've been trying to tell people, for us to get a Zoom call together with this group is fun and it's great, but we're all at different places. I think we usually wake somebody up every time we try to have a 10:30 a.m. call. It's we might not even get Johnny from Taiwan on the call, and Carl Mostert from Queensland. He's trying to stay up until 1:30 in the morning to participate. So it's, and then we've got guys in Denmark and Poland. The European guys, they're 6 hours ahead of us, and that's been kind of a strange way to be like, okay, we're gonna still act like we're spending all this van time together when we're not. We're as far apart as we possibly could be. 6 feet social distancing with this team. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of miles we have between us.
That's a good point. You talk about social distancing. Obviously, tennis is one of those sports that you should be able to play your opponent and have no worries about social distancing. But I want to ask you, Jay, for someone who has not been fortunate enough to be over at Patriots to the tennis complex, actually see a match, kind of let everybody know just how a match looks. Because I think a lot of people, when you think tennis, you think singles and doubles. And of course, even in college, that is the case, but you have a lot of singles going on at one time, and then, of course, doubles. Kind of take us through what a typical match looks like in terms of the pairings, and then how a winner is determined.
Yeah, sure. There's so many different things, Everett, that are going into a tennis match that, for a tennis coach, a college tennis coach is even a lot different than a private tennis coach that most of these kids grow up with, just because the dynamic or the format of how the match is played is so different. So when you show up to Patriots Point, it's an unbelievable facility. Angelo is Anastapulo, the director of tennis, has created a facility that's unbelievable with rocking chairs, and we've got 3 courts on one side and 6 on another side. And that makes a difference because the format for us is we're going to play doubles matches first. There's 3 doubles matches, and you need to win 2 out of 3 of those matches to take the first point. Right? So 2 out of 3 gets you 1 point, and then you take that 1 point, like a bonus point, over to 6 singles matches. And then all 6 singles players, which it can be a different number of players than play doubles. So 6 people play doubles, and they're in different pairings, and there's a position. So a 1 position, a 2 position, and a 3 position. You play that in order level of play. They play against the first, second, and third position of another team. Then the winner of that point goes to the other side, and we play 6 singles matches. They're all going at the exact same time. And then we play all of those trying to see who the first team is that can get 4 points. So if you go over there with 1 singles point or 1 doubles point, that gives you an advantage because now you only need to win half. You only have to have 50% of your singles matches.
Gotcha. So that makes Yes, now. Okay, now because I've always wondered, and when you say you actually win a match day, I know in regular women's tennis it's best 2 out of 3. Do they just play one set, or do they play best out of 3 sets to get that quote unquote one?
Well, it's been changing. So currently, what happens is the boys will play a 6-game set of doubles to start the match. So 1 set to 6. We play with no ad scoring. So if you get to even if you're scoring a game and you get to 40 all or deuce, you play a sudden death point to see who wins that game. And then we
Gotcha.
play the set out to completion to 6. And then there is no longer any warm up when you move over to play singles. So we take both teams, we do a little cheer, we have a little bit of regrouping before we go play singles. And then we go to the other side. There's no warm up with your player. It'd be like pitcher throwing the first pitch without ever warming up or anybody taking a look at him. You start playing the guy who's on the other side of the match. And then, so we play 2 out of 3 sets. So for singles, it is 2 out of 3 sets. It's still no ad scoring. And then if the match is decided, we either stop the match or we might then play a 10-point tiebreaker in place of a third set. But it is 2 out of 3 set scoring like a normal, like if you went to the Volvo Open, it looks just like that.
So Jay, let me ask you, because it sounds like always looking for that, not necessarily workaround, but a strategic standpoint. So let's say, Jay, I'm the head coach, and I know their number one is like one of the top players in the country. My number one's good, but it's going to have to take that number one's got to have a bad day. I'm going to have a good day, so to get that, to win that one. Is there strategy involved where you say, hey, you know what, not necessarily just give up, but you say, okay, my number one, instead of using my best player against their number one and potentially losing, I'll flip-flop and maybe say my number one play 3 and just – because it doesn't matter who plays their number one because they're going to win. Is that how it works, or do you guys just say, hey, no, my number one plays your number one? How does that work?
Yeah, I think there is actually a lot of rules set up in play from match to match. So you can't move somebody from one match to the next, in more than one position. And a lot of the conferences really help kind of, you can protest a match if you felt like somebody did make a flop right before a match started. So for us, you can kind of see who's coming on the schedule, and you might know that they've got a better one player than you do, but your number twos might be able to flip. That's really it's against the rules when you're putting your lineup together. And at the same time, the coach can protest if you did make something that was really obvious of a move. In our sport, the same thing probably holds true though, where there's a lot of difference between, or not much difference in parity between number one player position and number 2, and maybe even number 3. So we don't typically, the guys usually kind of get comfortable in a position, during the course of a match, like maybe a baseball pitcher knows that he's a Friday night pitcher or something like, and they kind of get used to that. We usually keep players in the same position. We might move them around at the beginning of a season, trying to get people in a comfortable spot where they feel confident, they feel like they can win in that position. But during the course of the season, there's not that much movement from those sorts of positions. But the strategy that you were suggesting is definitely something that all college coaches, look at as they're trying to figure out where people belong in a lineup or where they should be. It may not be so much about me getting to play against one team or another, so I'm going to move everything. But, especially as you're trying to develop players, somebody might play a different position as a freshman than they would as a sophomore or a junior, so all that goes into play. But positioning for our sport is really one of the biggest differences that makes college tennis totally different than any other form of tennis that you would watch. So when you watch tennis on TV or you go to the Volvo Open and you watch tennis, you're going to, they're playing head-to-head matches, trying to progress through a draw and play a tournament, in a tournament style. And that's not what we're doing. We're all going out together, playing an individual match, trying to get a team score. It's a weird function of team sport and individual sport. So it does make coaching fun because, sometimes there's different strategies that go into that. And then also makes it almost impossible to get right because we play so many different teams.
Now you're getting ready to enter, I believe, your 14th year or 13th year at the college. In terms of the head men's coach, you've been there for 14 years because you served as an assistant to Angelo on the women's side. What's the biggest difference, I guess, between coaching the women's teams and obviously coaching the men's team as you've done over the past dozen years?
I think that's Angelo might be better to give a great explanation of the nuances because I have not been a head coach for a women's program. So I don't know that I can answer it completely. But doing the coaching the men, there's definitely a different approach to game style. The guys are playing a little more aggressive on the serve and some of their first couple shots, where the girls off the ground are really strong. Some of their rallies might be a little bit longer. They might use a little less spin than some of the guys, but in terms of strategy and game style, what Angelo and I would talk about, in terms of coaching, those things are very similar. I think, the difference between boys and girls is so black and white. When we're, as you're traveling with them and trying to get into their head, a lot of what we do actually happens in the middle of a match on a bench. When somebody's dealing with winning and losing, or momentum, or just all the other things that are going on in their worlds. That the way that Angelo or a women's coach would speak to their player, often depends on the coaching style, the player's personality, and then a little bit of strategy going into that. So I'm not sure that there's a huge difference beyond once you get on the court, but there's a pretty significant difference, obviously, as we travel and just deal with different things that are happening between team members and those sorts of things.
As you mentioned, Jay, the team is really starting to hit their stride right there in March. Talk about next year. I know you got 9 guys coming back, so the future is definitely looking bright for the Cougars men's tennis team when the season resumes in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I think it's it really is. It was a young team, and they all knew that at the end of the end of April was when we wanted to be playing our best. And to look at all those guys and see them ready to come back and kind of eager to come back and kind of feeling like maybe they left something on the table just because we didn't get to finish it. I'm really excited. The program and Coach Rob, who's our assistant coach, is been fired up ever since we had to shut things down. And we're ready to coach. The guys have been ready to play. And like you said earlier, for the guys to be able to get out and play tennis as a way to, keep some social distancing and still play the sport that they love. Tennis is a sport that you can play socially distant. Besides handshaking at the end of the match, there's not a lot of times you need to be in contact with each other. So I think they've been able to probably continue practicing in some form, or that has not been a high priority because we wanted them to go home and be safe and be with their parents and just get to a safe place. But I think as the summer progresses or they start to get to a normal place, tennis is something that they're all used to practicing on their own, for their whole life. They've been practicing with a coach or a partner. So, the advantage for a tennis player right now might be that, during the summer months, you can still do a good job of playing and finding people to play with without feeling like you're violating any local rules. As long as the net straps are down. A lot of places in Charleston for a while took their nets off. They didn't want people out playing tennis, which was sad for the city, and to think that that might not happen. But I think those nets are starting to come back on. I think from Denmark to Taiwan to Australia, I think the guys are looking to be able to find tennis courts, and Charleston is moving. So we're excited to get them back. It's a young group of guys that I think all are going to feel a year older this coming year, and a year stronger, and definitely a family. They've kind of come together, and I think they're excited to get back on campus and get in the bus together again.
You talk about that. That's a great point about the social distancing and what goes on in men's tennis. Jay, I've seen a couple of the tennis matches where basically, which is a little different because at the professional ranks, those guys have ball boys and ball girls, and now they were playing, out them. I think when we spoke with Angelo earlier in the summer, he mentioned that maybe one of the rule changes would be, for instance, your guys, everybody would have their own can or two of tennis balls. You just hit your balls and you hit it back. You never actually touch anyone else's tennis ball, obviously, because they're serving, they have theirs, you have yours. Have you heard of any other potential changes? Is there any talk amongst the college tennis coaches of what it might look like when you guys do get back?
No, I don't know that in terms of how we, exchanging balls and, functioning in a social distance setting. I don't know that there's been a lot of talk about how we would change things to make it. But I think those are all things that have been played out. There's a scenario in play where you could share balls or have your own set of balls. A scenario where you really just aren't, like I said earlier, handshaking your opponent. Scenarios where you might walk out into a match, without really doing much of an introduction and really just playing a socially distant match. But I think, so much of that for us, the hardest part actually for the boys is, or for most tennis teams, is transportation, probably, and getting them. They're going to be together, as we travel, but once we get to an opposing place, there's not going to be, there doesn't need to be that much interaction, in college tennis. Even the fans are kind of off out of the court. There's not much chance for interaction there. And the opposing teams, we've got rules set up where you've got to be a court away to cheer for your own team or an opposing team. So there's a lot of things already in play that keep our sport safe from contact with each other. So we're not used to ball kids, so that wouldn't be a problem. We usually have referees. At the mid-major level, we have referees that are kind of roaming the facility. So even our referees wouldn't really be. They don't have a necessity to be within 6 feet of a player. So yeah, I think college tennis kind of looks like a healthy environment to participate in our sport moving forwards. If the doors stay open to college athletics.
All right, so Jay, you said something earlier, and it just kind of dawned on me. You said that somewhat lonely because you hadn't had your tennis, guys there, your team, and I'm not. Jay, don't you have like an 18-month-old and a couple other kids? So I guess my question is, Coach, how could you be lonely and almost borderline bored with all those kids around the house, probably giving you a little work for your money?
Yeah, I mean that really is. I can say I miss my tennis team, which is the truth of me kind of feeling lonely when they've picked up and had to leave. They have seen all of my kids and met them at tennis matches, and but I have been more busy over the last 10 weeks than I've ever been, probably. I have a 12-year-old. I've got a 9-year-old. I've got a 6-year-old, and I've got a 17-month-old. So my house is full of blessings. And, for me, when we had to, all my kids started going to Zoom school recently, once we their schools all shut down, their schooling didn't. So I have become a 6th grade math teacher, a 4th grade math teacher. My wife hasn't recruited me or used me to do a lot of English grammar, but I've also done some kindergarten math. And when my children are busy doing their Zoom school and they don't need me to function as a teacher or facilitator, I have been taking a lot of special walks with my 17-month-old to get her out of the house so that she isn't distracting everybody from their Zoom call. So that has definitely been, and my wife has done an unbelievable job of, structuring and scheduling our house so that we have things to do. So I really still know, like I normally do, I know where I'm supposed to be at a certain time of day, when I'm supposed to be upstairs with 4th grade math, when I'm supposed to be making lunch downstairs. But it has been a team effort at my house. And, that's a team that I'm always loving to be with. So, for this to shut down, this one team that I coach of college boys, for them to not be here has meant a lot more coaching at my house, which is, would not normally have happened this time of year. This would be the busiest 8 to 10 weeks of the year for me. So for me to get to be home, I have appreciated all the things that my wife does so much more than I could have ever done any other way, to see what happens every day in
Yeah,
my
that seems
house.
to be the theme, Jay. Like when all the coaches that have come on, obviously they appreciate all the renewed or the time they have at home now. And I didn't hear you say, so I'll just ask you, how's your yard looking? Because every other coach, I think, to this point, they have their green thumb and very proud of the landscaping that they do in their house and other house projects.
Well, unfortunately for my wife, I am not that great at house projects, or at least completing them. We have hung more pictures than I usually would get done in 10 weeks. But we had actually moved into a new house in January. So we still had things in boxes and rooms. So for us, we really did have like unpacking to do. Things that I was hoping to push off until April kind of got pushed into the forefront, just so we could set up rooms for school. My yard has definitely gotten a lot more attention than it normally would have. But my two sons really have been helpful, and they love using the hose and watering things and fertilizing the grass. So they've really probably helped me keep our plants alive and those things going. But there's definitely been projects that I've been able to do. We need some professional help for me to complete some of the things that my wife wants to do. But even today, me going to the grocery store and trying to figure out all the things that are on the list, I don't know that I'll ever be efficient at running some of those errands the way that I should have been. So for me, getting to see all of these things and how much work goes into running this house for people, has really made me appreciate my wife. And I still probably don't tell her enough, but it's been fun to watch the way she coaches and teaches in the house, all these kids. And I've loved being home so I could participate in that and, kind of be able to put a little more purpose into the time that I have with them. I've read more books at a sixth grade or below reading level this in the last 10 weeks than I think I read my whole life as my own books. But I've read some good stuff and love the quality time I've had with my kids.
Yeah, see, Jay, the key to the grocery shopping is you have to order online. Just pull your car up and let them put the bags in the back of your car. Then you look like a hero because your wife's impressed that you were able to get everything you ordered because you went online. So just a little suggestion for you there
Yeah.
from personal experience.
I appreciate that. I can mess that up too. That's what's really funny. I did that, and I didn't check the bags when I was like bringing everything into the car. So I got all the way from Mount Pleasant all the way back to Johns Island where I live, and I was missing like 5 things, and then I was back in a world of figuring out how I was going to solve that problem real fast.
That is good stuff. Well, safe to say that if you should have to continue homeschooling, I'm pretty sure that the PE class for all your kids will probably be tennis. That's not a bad elective. So, yeah, and whatever middle school they end up to, so I guess now there are middle school tennis teams around here in the low country, and my daughter actually played on one as well. So, yeah, we know that's that tennis team should be pretty good if they got those Bruner boys on it.
Yeah, PE has been one of the things that I was hoping, or at least my wife felt confident that I would be able to do somewhat well. From running camps and doing things, I can get all those different skill levels. We've definitely been active outside of the house, and living in Charleston has been probably another blessing to being at home. We haven't been stuck inside. We've been able to ride bikes. My kids have learned how to rip stick and pogo stick. Like we've just been crushing it with that outside activity. I don't know if my neighbors enjoy us running around playing tag in the house, but I've played more tag around my house than I have in years.
That's good stuff. Well, Jay, man, we so appreciate you taking some time and obviously talking about the men's tennis team in solid hands. Obviously, you've done a great job with that. And again, with the team being so young, that just means the next year or 2 or 3, look out because the Cougars are going to be a force to be reckoned with around the Southeast and the CAA across the country. So, Coach, thank you so much. Don't forget, if you need any more information on the men's tennis program, you can log on to CofCsports.com, click on men's tennis, and schedules and player profiles, rosters, news, notes, anything you need to know, you can find it right there on CofCsports.com. Jay Bruner, thank you, sir. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Everett. Thanks for the time. Thanks for what you're doing to help out the College of Charleston, kind of keep staying in touch with our fans. And this is a great thing. So thank you for doing this.
Not a problem at all, man. We'll have to catch up again. And like I said, I'm trying to get it to where even in the future, instead of doing a Zoom, maybe you and I can, and Angelo maybe, just sit over there on the rocking chairs at the tennis complex and we'll just talk tennis. We'll talk serve, volley, first serve, second serve, backhand, forehand, just normal tennis stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you could come out. We really need like some good coaching out there. We'd love to have you come and give us some strategy, some advice. We've got a bunch of rocking chairs that Angelo put together. Or organized us putting together. So I'm sure he'd love to come and help you pick out the right rocking chair when you get there.
See, Jay, I'm a clay court specialist. The hard court's that's not El Timor. So unless you got some clay courts out there, I'll sit in a rocking chair and we can talk about it.
We'd love to have some commentating though. We'd love to have somebody out there. You can talk during our college matches. They're not quiet. We'd love to have you out there making some noise.
Well, I tell you, man, I don't watch a lot of it. Obviously, I do enjoy when Bob Moran and those guys are over at the
he's great.
Island. But I love the majors, and watching those guys, whether it be Nadal or who's Club Fed, those guys, whether it be Wimbledon or French Open or especially the U.S. Open. That's just always a neat experience. And I'm a huge fan of tennis. So, like I said, definitely one day I will come over and see if I can hit a couple of ground strokes and fun over there at the tennis complex.
You're always welcome over there. Thanks for including us.
That sounds good. That's Jay Bruner, the men's tennis coach at the College of Charleston. Thanks for watching Chatting with the Cougars, and we'll see you next time.